Welcome to the Diverse Minds podcast, where we give you the tips, tools and techniques you need to be a mentally healthy and inclusive leader. Each week, you'll hear about a variety of topics linked to mental health, wellbeing and diversity that will enhance both your professional practice and personal wellbeing. Welcome to the 19th episode of the Diverse Minds podcast. In today's episode, I'm going to be talking about that infamous Monday in January, Blue Monday, and why employers should care about staff well-being, perhaps even more so during this month. Just a note to say that it's thought that travel company Sky Travel created the term Blue Monday in 2005 to get people to book holidays to escape the cold. Blue Monday is actually based on a formula or equation thought to be developed by psychologist Cliff Arnold that takes into account weather, level of debt, monthly salary, time elapsed since Christmas, how long a person has failed to keep their New Year's resolutions, motivational levels, and that need to take action. However, even if this was initially created as a marketing ploy, I think there's value in thinking about Blue Monday or people feeling low, mental health, mental ill health, in January as a way to kickstart the conversation, as January in the Western Hemisphere can be a tricky time. It may also give people an opportunity to talk about their mental health and well-being generally, and to support the concept of destigmatisation. To be honest, Mondays can be tough for all of us, no matter what time of the year it is. It's the day of the week staff are most likely to call in sick, and it's thought that the third Monday in January is Blue Monday, the most depressing day of the year. The day when it really dawns on people that the celebrations are truly over, winter has us in its grip, debts from Christmas may be mounting up, and the pressure of New Year's resolutions are stifling. And as you recall, my episode last week was all about wellbeing 365 or 366 as it's going to be in 2020, and why you don't need New Year's resolutions, so you might like to check that out. And it's no secret that I'm a big fan of workplace wellbeing and have clearly dedicated my career to it. So I would say start as you mean to go on in the new year, as an employer, as an organisation. And I'm not saying that we can wave a magic wand and make it better. But looking after and valuing staff is vital to public and private sectors alike. According to the last Health and Safety Executive Labour Force Survey regarding health and safety at work, published in October 2019 for Great Britain, 12.8 million sick days were recorded in relation to work-related stress, depression or anxiety. 602,000 workers currently experience work-related stress, anxiety or depression, and that's new or long-standing. And we hear different figures all the time, and I'm going to use one today that comes from the Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development from 2018. And it's thought that this kind of work-related stress, anxiety and depression could cost the UK up to £94 billion a year. So we've mentioned in the Western Hemisphere, January can be a tough time, and I think it can also really demotivate people and make them feel worse. And in effect, the true meaning of Blue Monday is that we all have mental health and mental ill health, as I talk about a lot, and there are steps that employers and individuals can be taking all year round to look after our mental health and have those discussions. And increasingly, there are more and more risk factors or things that make us more vulnerable to developing mental ill health. Stress resulting from financial issues, unsupported trauma, loneliness, 0 hours contracts, that ongoing stress, physical ill health and long waiting lists for NHS support. And again, that's not a criticism of the NHS, but it is the way things are at the moment. And these things aren't just going to be confined to 1 month, let alone one day. And we can certainly have a debate about how the weather affects people. You know, the joke is that British people are obsessed with the weather and we talk about it all the time, and indeed we do. And of course, our environment affects our mood. And people living with long-term or persistent mental ill health may find the winter months harder. But we also know that mental health problems and mental ill health impact on people all year round, and that many people will struggle to ask or seek for help, which is why I think Blue Monday can be a really important lever in starting that discussion. And therefore the question for employers is, what should I or could I be doing all year round? And what could or should we be doing more of when there could be specific pinch points during the year where my team or my staff could be feeling more vulnerable? And at the end, specifically for managers, I'm delighted to share with you a link where you can download my ebook, The Mentally Healthy Leading Manager, which will help all managers put positive practices in place. So if a majority of us are feeling low, even if it's temporarily, what can workplaces actually do? Some people might think it should be focused on the individual and it's about resilience. And yes, there's a place for that. But there are workplace initiatives that can be implemented in the workplace to support staff on a short and long-term basis. So my first tip is what I would call a duvet day. Let your staff have a duvet day. Well, what's a duvet day? It's essentially a day that employees can take when they do not feel their mental best, whether someone experiences diagnosed mental ill health or not. And this is a day that people should be able to take, often at short notice, without having to divulge personal information. And every staff member ideally should be set an allocated number of duvet days that can be taken whenever the employee wants a day off. And this should be aside from sick or annual leave. And usually 5 duvet days over the year is enough. But by putting this in place, it allows staff to be more open and honest, increasing trust with their employer. It also means presenteeism, which is when people drag themselves into work when they're not particularly feeling mentally well, it could be physically well, and they're not very productive because they're sitting in front of their desk or they're doing the tasks that they need to do, but they don't have the energy to do it, and therefore productivity is driven down. And interestingly, presenteeism is thought to cost the UK economy about 15.1 billion per annum, compared with 8.4 billion per annum for absenteeism. And that's from the Bupa Health Matters report from 2016. So no doubt those figures will have gone up. So that's my first tip. The second thing is about checking in at team meetings. Make checking in on how everyone feels an integral part of team meetings prior to getting down to the agenda. Before a team meeting, just go around and ask open questions or an open question to see how everyone's doing. So before we start today, how's everyone feeling today? Welcome back. It's the 7th of January, 6th of January. Let's talk about how we're doing. How was our holiday? By talking about feelings openly, this creates a culture where people can be honest and sincere. In addition, other team members can provide appropriate ideas, and this results in better camaraderie and team support. So the third thing follows on from checking in, perhaps, and might be more of a situation in one-to-ones, but having the conversation that may seem tricky. So equipping yourself and equipping line managers to have the conversation about mental well-being can be a real game changer. It could be that staff are experiencing a low mood for a short period of time. It could be related to a project they have on. It could be related to the global environment. It could be related to what's going on in politics. However, when these feelings continue for several weeks and the symptoms worsen or deepen, this could be a sign that someone is moving from a low mood into what might be classified as clinical depression. Now, it's not our role generally, most of us aren't practitioners to diagnose, but knowing how to have the conversations and spot the signs can be crucial to encourage people to seek support and professional help in time. And one of the most effective tools for managing mental ill health post-diagnosis in the workplace is a Wellness Recovery and Action Plan, or WRAP for short. And you can find more information about this in my ebook, The Mentally Healthy Leading Manager. But also just asking how someone is and saying to them, I've noticed, and just saying what you've noticed in a really clear way. Or, you don't seem to be yourself. Would you like to talk about it before we talk about the agenda at your one-to-one? Or how have you been feeling? And that just gives someone the space to talk about how they are. And my fourth tip is around one of my other subjects that I'm very passionate about, is not to be afraid to talk about suicide. Now, I did a specific podcast on this subject for National Suicide Awareness Day on the 10th of September. So if you want to know more and I go more in depth to that, please do have a listen to that episode. And I've also written a few blog posts about how to have a conversation that might seem really difficult. And clearly this isn't something that we speak about every day, but around 6,000 people in the UK take their own lives, and sadly this figure has gone up for the last recorded statistics for 2018. So providing appropriate workplace training can equip everyone with skills onto how to have the conversation about suicide should the situation arise. The other thing I would say is if people feel afraid to have a conversation about suicide, is to train certain people up to manage and have those conversations, but also to be really clear about the policies and steps that you would take if it gets to a crisis situation, or if someone is likely to take their own life on workplace premises, and how you can keep someone safe. I think by providing training, it takes the fear away from the subject, enabling more people in the workplace to signpost to the appropriate help. So it's not about anyone trying to be the experts or the clinical practitioner, but to have that conversation around spotting the signs and keeping someone safe. I've been trained in the 2-day assist suicide prevention program. And as a result of being a mental health first aid trainer and having been trained in Assist, I have a one-day suicide awareness course available if you're interested to find out more, to talk about suicide and provide a framework about how to have a supportive conversation. So my fifth tip is about promote the support you have available and promote again, again, and again. So promoting employee assistance programs, EAPs, that many of you know I'm a big fan of and mention a lot, trade unions, dignity at work contacts, and any other sources of support you might have in your workplace, more than you think you need to. Make sure as well that you're aware of what's on offer by asking HR, occupational health, if you have an internal occupational health, talking to your peers across the organisation. And if you're a small organisation, find out what's free or low cost. Many services are available for you. One example I'd like to share with you is Mind's free small to medium enterprise online mental health training, and I've included a link in the show notes. I've actually done this myself just for interest, and I found it really useful, and it gives small and medium enterprises a framework and lots of ideas about how they can support their staff without spending a lot of money, because clearly budgets look very different in smaller organisations. And employee assistance programs are fantastic and a way for staff to access immediate confidential counselling or professional advice. However, in most organisations I've found that these are very underutilised, and that's not for lack of trying, but often staff only start to search for help when they're faced with a problem or they hit crisis. So I would say invite your EAP in as often as possible, get them to do talks. This should be part of your package, or find out. Have posters on the back of toilet doors because people will absolutely see them, and promote their services on digital screens in the mediums that you use for relevant communications channels. And the more staff that access EAPs, the more likely they are to get help sooner rather than later when it hits a crisis point. So Blue Monday may affect all of us, but there's steps employers can take to make it easier, but also to start the conversation for people to think about wellness all year round, or if people are struggling, to talk about mental health and mental ill health all year round. And by promoting mental wellbeing and addressing mental ill health, this creates a more positively productive workplace. And I'd love to know what you do to support staff in your workplace in January. So my tips are, I'm going to leave you with: number 1, provide a duvet day. Number 2, check in at team meetings before you get down to the agenda. 3, have the conversation that may seem tricky if you notice a change in someone. 4, don't be afraid to train staff to talk about suicide. And 5, promote your support mechanisms that you have in the workplace again, and again. So if you want to do more in your workplace this year, so 366 days of this year, firstly, you can download my ebook, and I've provided the link in the show notes. And why not find out more about how I can help you in your workplace wellbeing plans by booking a 30-minute free call with me on my Calendly. You can also check out the solutions I provide on my website, diverseminds.co.uk. I'd love to hear from you and know what you're doing. And I'll see you in the next episode.
Thanks for listening to the Diverse Minds podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you access your podcasts from. You can also connect with me on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Tune into next week's episode of the podcast, where I'll bring you more insights on mental health and inclusion. Bye for now.